undergrad, I got a degree in astronomy, and then took a year off and went to law school. And I knew I wanted to be a crusading lawyer. I had no idea exactly for what, but I figured the best way to figure it out was to get involved. So I started out my first year doing criminal defense work. I didn't really like it. I then transitioned to defending post-foreclosure tenants and homeowners from banks who were trying to evict them. It was great, it was really exhausting. I decided I probably couldn't do that. I figured, screw it, I'm just gonna go to a law firm. I'm gonna focus on learning how to be a lawyer. I'm gonna make a lot of money. I'm gonna have a great time. Sleep 8 hours a night, things like that. And figure out what exactly I wanted to crusade for there. So I took on a bunch of pro bono cases, which is what you do. I tried employment law. It's like meh. I tried environmental law. Also not my jam. I was like, screw it. I clearly need to just have fun and relax. Fast forward till now, when it turns out relaxing is kind of hard because I discovered immigration law. So my firm took on a class action, and people were like, hey, you like progressive things, maybe you should help with this. And I was way overbooked, but I'm incapable of saying no, it turns out, so I said yes. And I started learning all sorts of things that were really interesting. So hopefully no one here has encountered the criminal system, but here's sort of like a little bit of background about it and how immigration law and specifically immigration detention fits into it. So there's the state system. Most laws that you hear about, most people that are in jail are imprisoned in the state system. That's sort of your basic murder, theft, etc. There's the federal system, which is generally much more serious stuff. It's like if you're involved in criminal racketeering, etc. Kyle, will you raise your hand? Yeah, so Kyle will raise your hand. Whereas if you get involved in the state system, you only have to deal with Ray. Ray, can you raise your hand? Ray works for the state attorney general. Not nearly as serious. Immigration is part of the federal system, but it's actually sort of separate in that immigration isn't considered, if you're put in immigration detention as opposed to in criminal detention, it's considered civil. Civil is generally like when people are suing each other. The difference between immigration detention and normal civil things is they can actually put you in jail if you are a non-citizen. And because it's considered civil as opposed to criminal, you don't have any of the rights that most people in the criminal justice system have, meaning you have no right to a lawyer, you have no right to a jury, your sentences don't really exist, they just sort of lock you up for an indeterminate period of time, and this creates a whole bunch of what I would consider to be human rights violations and problems generally. So I started finding out more and more about this as I was working on this class action, and my 8 hours of sleep slowly started to decrease. So how do people end up in immigration detention, you might wonder? Anyone who's not a citizen can end up there. It doesn't matter if you are a legal permanent resident, if you have a green card. In fact, a lot of people in immigration detention are people that have come here legally. Those are people who generally have some sort of criminal history, and they serve their criminal sentences, they get out, and then later get picked up by ICE. It also does include a lot of people that are here without papers, undocumented, and those are people that can get picked up at the border. They can be people that are fleeing from other countries. They're like, asylees essentially, who come in and don't have any documentation and so get picked up, or your guys who are standing on the side of the road looking for work, and an ICE officer comes up, asks for documentation, they don't have it, so they lock them up. So across the country, there's 34,000 people at any given time in immigration detention. That's how many beds we have in immigration facilities. And Congress has passed a handful of laws. One of them says that at any point in time, those beds have to be filled. So regardless of whether or not there are people who you would think deserve to be there, ICE is statutorily mandated to have each and every one of those beds filled at any given point in time. This is sort of what has inspired a handful of the raids people might hear about is, beds become empty because there aren't as many people that are getting picked up in like routine criminal processes, and so they have to go out and expand them. This has been a hot button issue in immigration reform. The fact that Congress is really good at passing enforcement mechanisms, like you have to put 40,000 or 34,000 people in jail at any given point in time, and not so good at passing things like extended options for getting visas. California has about 1/10 of those beds. Last year, over the course of the 12-month period, California had 4,300 people in immigration detention. A lot of those people are actually pretty close to here. There's a facility called RCCC, about, half an hour east of here in Elk Grove. There's another one in Yuba County, and then a bunch of those facilities are down in Southern California. So, some interesting stats. Only 11% of people being held in immigration detention at any point in time are considered dangerous. That means 89% of the people there, not actually like dangerous to the community. A lot of people, when they get apprehended, are told that they don't have a right to a lawyer, their case isn't very good, they're probably going to lose, and they end up signing their own deportation orders, i.e. agreeing to go back and leave, which means they have a 20-year ban on coming back. However, if people actually fight, if people actually get lawyers and fight their cases, 66% of them in the state of California win. So, that's unfortunate. Who is responsible for this? So, that's Kyle's boss, Eric Holder. So this is all done. I know that many of you aren't lawyers. I don't know how much legal background you have. Under the Constitution, most courts are Article III courts. They're established by Article III of the Constitution. There are judges that are appointed by the President. They're confirmed by the Senate. They have life tenure. And the idea is they're supposed to be pretty good judges. All of immigration is done via Article I, which means that the President is in charge of it. So the President, via Eric Holder, via the Department of Homeland Security, appoints immigration judges. And these are individuals who may or may not have strong legal backgrounds and may or may not actually be particularly intellectual. However, the fates of a lot of non-citizens are in the hands of people who aren't super accountable, who haven't been confirmed by the Senate, and while there are some access to appeals, they have essentially final say over these cases. So, what are some of the big challenges to solving this? One of the biggest issues that lawyers that want to represent people in immigration detention face is that the facilities are really far away from the lawyers. So, on purpose, they put these facilities in the middle of nowhere, because that's generally where you house criminals. So, for instance, if a lawyer from San Francisco wants to represent someone in RCCC, it's an entire day just to get down there to meet with them for an hour. They can be transferred anywhere because it's one big federal system. Someone can get arrested here, a legal permanent resident whose family's here, and they can find themselves in Virginia a week later. And it's really hard to get in touch with your family from facilities because your access to phones are limited. The ACLU just filed a class action about that because communication is such a problem when you're in these facilities. So your family, if you have any, can't even find you. Bonds, the lowest, if you've been picked up and detained and are a non-citizen, the lowest statutory bond you can be released on is $1,500. It may not seem like a lot of money if you're working and have been here for a while. If you're an asylee coming, fleeing from another country, and you come here with nothing, there's no way you're going to be able to pay that, meaning that you will be in immigration detention for the entirety of the time that your case is pending. And the laws. The laws actually really suck in a lot of areas. As a lawyer, what my firm is doing, we're challenging a law where there's some ambiguity. Lawyers have sort of done that. They've sort of taken the statutes that Congress has passed and have tried to narrow them as much as possible. But the reality is that there's just sort of a lot of laws that are pretty bad on the books, and the Supreme Court has upheld a lot of them. And so as lawyer and as an activist, you sort of have to think about it from non-traditional legal perspectives. So, what do you do with all of this? Like I said, my firm, the way I got involved with all of this was my firm was working on this class action. I said I would help out for someone who's going to Nepal to like hike up to Everest Base Camp because she said she couldn't work on it while she was gone. And I showed up in the immigration courthouse, which is similar to a lot of other legal services type courthouses that I've been in, except for everyone is wearing handcuffs. And you aren't actually allowed to talk to people unless you get permission from the guards. And I sort of thought that sucked a lot more than anything else that I had ever seen before. And that sort of got me thinking. I started talking to people. I was like, what would it take to get all of these people lawyers? Like, why don't they have them? And people were like, it is really expensive to represent detained people because they can't come to your office. Like, if you want to meet with them, you have to go all the way out there. Sometimes you don't actually get to see them when you make the trip out to the facility because the facility's on random lockdown and they're counting everyone. So you spend, more hours of your time just hanging out there. And lawyers are expensive, and it's hard to make a living doing that. And I was like, okay, so this is a problem that money could actually make a pretty big dent in. And it occurred to me that I actually have a lot of money because I'm a lawyer and I don't have loans to pay off. Funny how that happens. So I decided to start a nonprofit. And I have shanghaied some of my colleagues, like the wonderful Ray Onishi, to join me on the board of this. And I'm donating a lot of my money this year to getting it off the ground. We took a client about a month ago. We got him out at our first hearing, and he's spending Christmas with his family while the government decides whether or not they want to appeal. So, I got my 2-minute warning like 8 minutes ago, so I'm going to sit down and shut up. But if anyone here is interested in finding out more, you know where to find me. And yeah, I look forward to charging ahead. Thanks, guys. So the name is the Grossman-Caramello Foundation. Those are the names of the two professors that sort of inspired me at Harvard. And I had to put something down on paper when we were applying for corporate status without really thinking. So they're hard to spell, GCF for short. And we sort of have a number of different programming lines. The idea is to be a foundation, so a pass-through organization. The idea being that the talent and some of the infrastructure already exists in the Bay Area. It's just there's a serious lack of resources. And what I have access to that I feel like other people don't is networks, essentially, of really amazing people at my firm, really amazing people here, for instance, and really amazing people in general. So one of the things we want to do is start essentially a bail bond fund for people in immigration detention, which does not exist. It exists in the criminal world. You can't really get help paying your bonds, your bail, if you're in immigration detention. Some of the ideas that we're working on implementing is doing that through a community bank, and seeing how much community interest there is in that, and if there isn't, then just doing it through a more traditional means. Also providing stipends to current immigration attorneys that are willing to take more detained cases to cover things like the cost of transportation from here to facilities and their time. TaskRabbit, for instance, has a lot of great cars that you can rent for $30 an hour that have internet. And these are just things that immigration attorneys can't pay for, particularly ones that are doing a lot of work for low-income clients. So just sort of making it less economically impossible to take these cases. And then also connecting non-citizens to resources once they get out. What I really don't want to do is get an asylee out on a bail and put them out on the street. So working with religious organizations and other groups that are doing social services already in the community to provide sort of more holistic services to people caught up in the immigration detention net. One of the really beautiful things is that my office looks directly out onto the detained immigration court, and every single person that is in the system in the Eastern or Northern District of California, so most of Northern California, is brought to the courthouse across the street from where I work. That makes it pretty, I pop over and sort of get myself in trouble every week or so by going there and talking to people and volunteering to do too much. But yeah, so it is actually pretty easy to at least get a read on what's happening